with you in order to get some comments and some feedback on the things that Nicola has presented. First of all, it's about strategies. Are there any specific strategies for public organizations or semi-public organizations like Innovirus on the one hand, by universities on the other hand? Second aspect is about governance. How can you plan such strategies? What about synergies with all the actors? We've seen the fragmentation of the Brussels research area system. And the third aspect is about the themes, the research foci. So we have heard about smart specialization and smart diversification. So what about that aspect? So those are the three topics I would like.
Strategy teams. And the second one.
So strategies, governance is the second one, and the third is about the thematic approach. So smart specialization / diversification. So the first question would be, are there any explicit strategies to foster, sustain, support research innovation by, for example, Innovirus? So what about the Brussels research system and planning? Is there a focus, and we heard earlier a focus and planning condition context for Brussels?
There is a strategy, but I have to say that Innovirus is not anymore a child, but I would say a teenager. We still have a lot to develop because we will be 10 years old next year. So at the start, the objective was to construct a real qualitative funding agency, but it was quite passive we were receiving scientific projects and saying it's good, not good, you could improve like this, like that. Now we are entering in a more active phase where we need to have a strategic analysis where your figures will certainly be very interesting, and then being proactive to get the projects done and not only waiting that they come to us. Our strategy is determined by our specificities. Brussels and Innovirus is small. We have an infracritical size, so we need to concentrate on some themes. Smart specialization is not just a good idea for Brussels, it's a necessity. And we also have to concentrate. For instance, when we cannot go in every meeting at the European level where there is a discussion about the themes that will be developed. We have to focus on some of them, and we need to be represented by other Belgians. For the rest, we cannot be everywhere. We can, with the infracritical size, also not be very strong in every step of innovation enhancing. So we need to concentrate. And so smart specialization in three themes today: ICT, environment, and health. ICT because there is little space in Brussels, and ICT doesn't need a lot of space. Health because of the hospitals, environment because that's I think a big deal for everyone. So I think this was very, very interesting because we need to concentrate and to focus on some themes, but not only on some themes. That's what I learned today. We should concentrate on some actors. Today we are focusing on universities and enterprises, and now I see the major role that European actors play here. So I was thinking, we have to think about that, and we have to develop actions in this way for the internationalization and for FP participation. So that's a part of
perhaps a nice link up with the two other persons here, because they are in the universities. What about the role of the universities within this Brussels research area, and so the strategies. So we saw that the percentage for the universities was dropping, not only for the Brussels universities, but as well for the others in the periphery around Brussels. What kind of strategies are there, and to what extent do you need a link up with private actors, with European Union bodies of all kinds?
Thank you. Before answering that, I wanted to come back to Nicola's presentation and give one or two comments. You said that lobbyists are here in Brussels, and that is an advantage, but they are not research performers. And it's very rarely that you find lobbyists in the FP participation. Unless perhaps in some specific programs targeting policy. But it's for the first thing I wanted to say. And about European associations, I'm not surprised, and I suppose that with the Horizon 2020 integrated, you want me to speak? Integrated in way of having been built, there will be more numerous in the next participation. That for me it's quite logical. Speaking of the university participation that has more or less fallen, according to your numbers, from FP5 to FP7. Okay, I was not in the EU business at that time, but I'm not surprised. From the ULB point of view, I'm not surprised concerning the three choices you made. That is KBBE, environment, and energy. Why? And so on the same wavelength, I'm not surprised neither by the fact that the firms' participation has grown. First, because the three examples you chose to work on are coming from the cooperation program, which has been more and more driven towards industrial issues. So I'm not surprised that this has enhanced the industrial participation. The other point is that the three examples that have been chosen for the studies are top-down examples. That is, the European Commission wants to target some challenges either for its economic growth or its society wellness, let's say, in a very broad manner. And so these are top-downs. Some of our research performers within our universities can go into these programs quite easily, but not all of them. There are other programs of the Commission and of this framework program which are bottom-up. And this, because of limited human resource within our EU liaison offices, this is our priority. So we target European Research Council programs, we target mobility and researcher training programs like Marie Curie Actions. Of course, we bring all the help we can to researchers who want to enter the other programs, and we're quite proactive on them too, but it's not our priority. It's just because we need, as Magali Verdonk has just said, we need to concentrate, we need to have priorities. I think it's all what I wanted to say. And I'm not surprised either, knowing that you chose three programs that are out of the priority scope of the Brussels region. I mean, ICT health is what I told you when I arrived, and environment. So this is also not a surprise for me. Well, I think it's more or less about it.
Walter, what about the DB?
Well, maybe also a comment, and I also agree with what Magali Verdonk is saying. Now, universities are part of broader regional R&D systems, and the performance of universities is also very important, and the funding of universities also comes into play, especially for Flanders, because we have a very large system of indicators that determines our funding from the Flemish government. So our performance on certain levels comes into play when we get funding back from the Flemish community. And with regard to the participation at European levels, indeed it is ERC, etc., which are the most important performance at that level, and not on FP5 and FP7. But secondly, with regard to the reducing share of universities, you also have to take into account again that universities are only one sort of actors within this broader regional R&D system, and it's larger than what here is said about the Brussels research system, which is more or less here defined in terms of participation to the FP5 and FP7. Research system is much more than that. You have to take into account, for example, for Flanders, that since the late 90s, early 2000s, that several agencies, governmental agencies, have been set up with special programs with communication towards the SMEs, for example, which has as a consequence that the SMEs or larger industries are participating much more now in the FP5 and 7 programs. For example, you have AO, for example, you have the IWT, the IWT, and so on. So these agencies are now much better equipped with instruments to communicate and to stimulate private companies, smaller or medium or large companies. And this also means that universities have to be more competitive with regard to these industries within those programs. So reducing share, yeah, maybe when you take all figures into account, but when you look, for example, for the Flemish universities, their participation in ERC, there is no reducement. On the contrary, they are performing better now than 10 years ago. So if you look only at those figures, and I do appreciate the analysis made by Nicolas, but when you only look at these figures, this might give a little bit of a biased idea, and you don't know exactly what is meant by all those figures. So this is the first, or an answer to your first question. With regard to strategies, again, strategies for universities are different than strategies for governments. I'm not in a position here to say something about strategies of governments. But for universities, again, university is part of a larger regional R&D system. And for the VUB is part of Brussels regional capital system, but also of the Flemish regional R&D system and of the federal R&D system, so which means that we have to translate all those guidelines and principles and indicators which are formulated by those governments. We have to translate them into our own R&D measurement system and translate them into instruments for the researchers.
To what extent is this fragmentation at several levels and at the same level a problem for universities or for public agencies like Innovia? So do you need a holistic, integrated policy with link-ups between all the different types of actors and 7 types of actors? Do you need a common vision, a common governance of this Brussels research system, or is it functioning well as it is functioning today?
It's difficult to imagine that it could be positive, but I think we're handling with that. I don't know, it's difficult if you talk about Brussels research system with the province or Brussels region. The answer will be different. I don't think that at the strict regional level, it's a big problem because the specificities of Brussels are very different from the rest of the regions. The specificities are very different. So it's important to be different in a research policy in Brussels. If we were in a whole of Belgian strategy, I think Brussels could lose because the focus would be on themes that are not so important for Brussels, maybe. But if you think at the system level, yeah, certainly it's not a good thing that it's fragmented, but I don't know to what level it's negative.
I will not take any political position on this subject. Not being a Belgian citizen, I don't feel really legitimate on that. But what I can say is, for example, biotechnology for our university, it's on another campus. It's not on the Brussels campus. It's in the campus in the Walloon region. So it's probably not counted there. I don't know. So you see, there is a huge biopark center where the researchers are dealing with biotechnologies. So, well, it makes certainly your work not easy, for sure.
Can I just take the microphone? Just to register. Well, I don't know exactly if it was registered biotech. If you want, we can double check, since that this work was done also with Andres Pitoven from Belspo, because he knows all the different actors participating in FP, and he did all the classification according to the 7 categories. And he knew all this kind of problem. If you want, we can check if the biotech projects were registered, legally registered as ULB in Brussels or outside. But I think that will be more a methodological discussion, which is important. From a political point of view, not being Belgian, I try even to be a bit provocative. When I looked at these results, I say Brussels is going well. The performance of Brussels, when I compare Brussels, considered both as capital region or as research system, is much, much better than many other important areas. London is reducing the FP participation, if we want to use this as an indicator to benchmark. Madrid is reducing. Most of the other capital cities in Western Europe are reducing their role, including Paris, that we discussed in the first part, and Brussels seems going in the opposite direction. And then the provocative question is, it might be, but that's open to discussion, that this very complex governance that in theory, according to the literature on regional system of innovation, is not good, because in principle you have a firms, university, and one government, so a pretty easy framework. If this very complex governance doesn't make a mechanism of competition and positive willingness to perform better each other, I know this can be provocative, and I don't want to say that I'm convinced this is the best way, but probably there is something that, okay, it's complicated, it's hard to manage, it's hard to understand who is doing what. When I first arrived to Belgium and started working on these things, for me was, it took me a while to understand these things, but I wonder if this is not the case for something that is innovative. It's interesting to see all these efforts, at least in terms of FP participation, there are good results. In ERC, there are also good performance. So maybe this challenge can be leave open and then see clearly there is always room for improvement.
First, Walter, and then Benjamin.
From the point of view of the VUB or Flemish universities, the situation is absolutely detrimental. I checked it. We have at this moment 25 persons in different national contact points. We have 9 or 10 different places of national contact points from the point of view of the Flemish university. Which means that our colleagues who work for the EU cell here at R&D, they work together with, for example, BEA, the Brussels Enterprise Agency, which seems to be one of the best at the moment, best performing. And for several information, you have to go to information given by certain English or French organizations, and not the Flemish or other contact points. And I exclude the BEA, because they say that's a very good agency. So, which means that we only get fragmented information. from the point of view, not as a Brussels university, but from the Flemish side, and I can speak for this from the point of view of a few years ago, it is indeed absolutely detrimental. We do lack a lot of information, and it seems that, and Mr. Korpakis can contradict, it seems that the Belgian or the regional governments are very badly organized at that point. So I don't know why this kind of figures are represented for Brussels, why you have these very good figures for Brussels, but maybe the indicator proximity, which is not yet an indicator into the official indicator system, but maybe this could be an indicator which plays. There are some studies who say that proximity is important, and especially for lobbyists and firms, proximity comes into play. But I don't think this is part of your analysis yet.
I think the difference of the result between the two type of actors can reveal one thing. That I think the situation is really complicated for universities, but much less complicated for enterprises, where the situation is regionalized with clusters, around Plan Marshall and so on. So the complexity of the relationship to the financing is better working for enterprises than for university, and maybe for public sector also, who have to combine. So one thing, the situation complicated to describe for a university may be simple for enterprise. Another thing, so one side. Another thing is the fact that when we look at the evolution of the kind of European coordination of FP participation in Brussels, is not a kind of professionalization of the participation through office. We are coordinating research, but are in Brussels. So a kind of same work of local, but coming at the European level, and most of them, I think, sectorial level. So a kind of sectorial cross-European coordination which come in Brussels and which is largely disconnected from the regional approach, but which occurs in Brussels.
That's
but
right.
I don't know who are these. I think it's interesting
Yes.
to go.
That was my question. Who are in details the EU actors or associations that you tell? That would be very, very interesting to know.
If you want, we can extract the full list, and we can have a look to all of them.
With pleasure.
But this is for the next seminar. I
Yes.
mean, I will just need a bit of time to do it. But for sure, it can be done, even if you want to consider all the different. If you want, university, it can be complicated because, for example, some people register as Vrije Universiteit of Brussels, and then we don't know which one. But there are still people using the English acronym that complicate dramatically the game. In terms of association, it's true. For example, well, it is not a secret. When I was working in the commission, in the application, there are also some consultancy that helps you to make all the administrative reports, all the documents, to report all the budget. And there are companies and consultants that make this for job.
Yeah.
I have some friends working there. It's a business, and if you apply to FP call with them, you get an help because they know how to write a good proposal. They know the rules because it's not easy. I mean, it's we know that it's a complex game. Plus all, and this can be done both by regional delegation. For example, a regional delegation have some people doing these things, or private consultant, or some other kind of, or city delegation, etc. But this is something that it exists, and one of the purpose of our study is to show the fact that this reality exists and is specific for Brussels. You cannot find everywhere.
This makes me think of something that is out of the scope of your study, but the public procurement tenders that the Commission, DGs, European Parliament, GRCs, etc., pay a price for a service that they ask some people to give them. And for example, our social science in the field of law, for example, or in the field of economics, our researchers in our university are very much involved in those tenders. But what happens? We are not visible because a private company answers the tenders. In this private company, there is 1 or 2 persons. And of course, they don't have the expertise, so they turn to universities. But universities, they are subcontractants, the experts, the research performers. They don't appear, you know, on the global picture of the project, of the tender. So this may also may hide the participation of universities. Although I know it's not FP7 scheme, but it happens in lots of cases.
Yeah, services. The studies are services for us. I mean, whatever happens through public procurement is services. Studies are evidence services. But I see what you mean here.
Erik and then Bas.
I have a question and a comment. My factual question is that you also look at end users noted in FP7. Because you have the networks with whom are you collaborating, but also to whom is it oriented, because that could help us answering a question where I have a comment, but to whom is
No.
because
No.
that's, I mean, I just from experience, the FP7 project I'm involved in has end users, which is basically the coast defensive plan in Flanders on climate change and urban systems challenges. So you have, if you want to, that's well, my comment is, who should coordinate the Brussels research system? You raise as a question. Well, is this Brussels research system really a system? Or is it a territorial location of a number of institutions and actors? And shouldn't we then make, I mean, so it's, instead of having a Brussels research system, it's the Brussels metropolitan region that you describe. So fair enough, your indicators indicate what is happening within the Brussels metropolitan region. But at the same time, you are confronted with the competitive internal aspect of the Brussels metropolitan region. That is that the Brussels metropolitan region is part of competition between 3 regions at least, if not other levels of scales in Belgium. And then it is important, I think, to look at, and I think that is out of your figures, is to whom or with whom strategically the research is related to. I don't think, for instance, that the Leuven University basically is part of the Brussels research system. That it is basically oriented in helping the development of the region, and that it is basically related to Innoviris. So my first answer to the second question would be, well, it's the Innoviris that is the interface between the regional interest and the research capacities within the region. But then, and what Walter says is right. Part the VUB research system is part of the competition. Some are working for Flanders, orienting the R&D in another regional direction, from Leuven to Maastricht, and having high R&D location in Genk, for instance, outside of Brussels. And at the other hand, others are working to look for spin-off possibilities within the Brussels region. So how can we further know about that? Because doing research with valorization as such, well, it might be beneficial for your competitor, and maybe better not to be applied there if you are in a competition.
Bas, you had a question as well.
Does Nicola want to answer that, or?
Yeah, but perhaps it's related
to...
Yeah, I mean, for me, so the most interesting outcome of this data set, or this part of the research, is the enormous relevance, importance of the European associations. I think that, in a way, it's logical because you're in Brussels, it's a bureaucratic city, administrative city, so in a way it's obvious. and at the same time see this clearly in a data set when it comes to what seem like relatively competitive research-oriented programs, the FP programs. I find that interesting. Now, there are two ways to respond to this. One is to complain about the bureaucratization of the framework programs and say, well, actually, there's a whole professional layer that's sort of as part of this project that are situated in Brussels. What I find more interesting is the question, how can, and that's sort of, you could say, a policy question, how can we actually sort of translate this? How can we use this as an opportunity? Because obviously the Brussels research system is not a system in the sense intended by a regional innovation systems literature. It's not integrated, so it's not a system. But of course there's a lot of potential in the sense that where the Brussels case becomes an interesting case because it has a European level integrated on a local level. But then my question becomes, how could we actually use these European associations to the benefit of Brussels? So the question links back to some of the data that you presented, because you said at some point that some of the European associations in Brussels increasingly link up with Belgian actors through the FP program. And my question is this increasing linking up, is that also the case for, say, European associations in Brussels linking up with Belgian actors in Brussels? Do you see a similar increase within Brussels as well?
I'm adding my question for the panel was, to what extent do the universities need to link up with the European bodies? What might the definition be? So to what extent do the Belgian universities in Brussels need to link up with the other expertise, knowledge, innovation centers within the same territory? First, Nicola, perhaps, and then question for the panel.
Well, two questions on what you say. 2 points that for me were important. Well, can I just have there? First, Brussels is seen as an European administrative capital, administrative and political capital, where all the formulaire have to be sent, all the proposals have to be sent, and also where all the political parties are sent. And this is the normal function of a research capital. You have the parliament, you have commissioners, etc. But in this case, there is something different that for me was unexpected. It's also a research capital. When we look at the research flows across Europe, Brussels plays a central role thanks to those European associations. Then we can discuss how far those associations go, because probably they are not really performing research, but they are just providing administrative support for all this kind of proposal. As we know, it's not easy to submit an FP proposal. But this role, it means that Brussels is a political capital, an administrative capital, and a research capital, because linkages in some kind of way pass here.
No, but my point is more normative. It's not a descriptive, because we know that is the case. But what's the normative consequence? Because if we follow the regional innovation systems logic, then there is some agglomeration benefit. There's some added advantage towards physical proximity because of tacit knowledge exchange. Question: practically speaking, does that mean for that say the regional innovation system in Brussels, say in the Vrije, say Brussels Studies Institute, say the R&D departments of the universities, should explicitly focus on exploiting the linkages with the European associations?
Yeah, but we need to know more about them.
Actually, to get access to these larger research networks in order to participate in. Because I don't think that is.
I know there is a quite large literature on regional delegation and the committee of the region in terms of policy. In terms of research, I've not yet found anything, so this is an open field. My second point is Brussels.
But we could also use literature on the logistical system supporting spaces of flows, which is not specific literature on research or R&D development,
sure.
which is literature saying how does the locality logistically support global flows.
Yeah.
And it's probably there that we find, so it is this, now it is research, but you could look at financial networks and how locally they are logistically supported, and try to transfer that to research.
Yeah. I mean, I know there are in other fields. For research, as long as I know, I've not found many analyses, and for me,
I think that the theoretical corpus of local innovation system
doesn't really fit the situation of the capital regions, and which are north more than. I think that this framework can work for the south of France, the region of maybe the region of Barcelona and so on, but doesn't really fit the main concentration flows of like Brussels, and maybe a kind of system around Paris, around London, and I think that maybe there has to be two framework of reflection for analysis, and maybe this one is not the good for Brussels. That was the you anticipated my second point, because in the literature on regional system of innovation, at the beginning it was national system of innovation, because they started in Denmark. The first studies were in Denmark, but Denmark has more or less the size of a region somewhere else. I mean, I don't want to be offensive with Danish, but it's a small country after all. They have one government, they don't have regional government, they have just municipalities, and they have, if I'm right, 4 or 5 universities, that 2 in Copenhagen, Aarhus and Roskilde, if I'm right. Then when they start looking, they say, okay, in southern France, you cannot call a national system of innovation is a regional one, when usually you have one regional government, 3 or 4 universities and some firms, maybe some large firms, some SMEs, that's okay. This is not the case of Brussels. This makes Brussels really a laboratory, because we don't have, I mean, there is the Brussels capital regions, plus if we want to work on the dimension of the Brussels research system, as we propose, but it's an hypothesis open to discussion, it means to involve the 2 regions, plus the 2 communities, plus the federal government of Belgium, and then the game became complex, and this theory is challenged, because the regional system of innovation doesn't fit with the case of Brussels. So from an academic point of view, it's very interesting. From a policy point of view, that is your perspective, it's much more complicated, and I'm happy to don't have to... No, I'm joking a bit, but...
Just a very brief, because I'm not so sure if the regional innovation system's conceptual framework as such does not fit. It just shows that Brussels is a bad regional system of innovation. You know what I mean? So it's not, because you could still say, well, the regional innovation system literature is descriptive, but at the same time normative. That's very typical for this literature. And the normative dimension is not realized, so we see in the case of Brussels.
First reactions from the panel, and then come to Mr. Kourpakis.
But I do agree that it's tempting to think that, as we are all located in Brussels, that we should profit about this presence of all those agencies and this whole EU system. But what is the aim? What do you want to get out of this proximity of all those institutions? I can only repeat that for university, we are part of a competitive system. We are, for the major part, not part of Brussels. We are part of Flanders. Within the whole construction of funding of our institution, and within the whole construction of measurement of our performance, we regard to Flanders. So, if we want to profit about, Flemish community, well, but if we want to profit about this Brussels system, then we have to be, for the major part of this Brussels system, and we are not.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, but I don't see the problem in the sense that even within the purely competitive logic, say if we accept it for the time being, then I would argue that linking up with European association offers the potential for more participation in European research projects, which is very much in line with the interest of the Flanders research governance system, as well as the Walloon, as well as the Brussels. I mean, there I don't see the tension there.
But do you think that just trying to link up that you will have more or huger participation in all those?
To be honest,
sure.
I was, and I'm a bit less curious about what can we get from this proximity, because I thought, okay, the DG research is in Brussels, but we everything happens through emails, or so what does it change? And so now I think well, that's something that I didn't know. The EU associations do play a role in this participation. So I'm a part of my curiosity is satisfied, because I know that there is something possible, but I need to know more. Because of course for Brussels with so little financial means, we need to get this European money to do something a bit significant. So it's interesting, and we're always focusing on, does it create jobs? That's the second strategy. Having a lot of participation is not interesting if it doesn't create jobs. It's our main goal that we sometimes forget, but we need to remind it every time. So yes, I can answer now, so, but I guess there's something to do, and it's interesting to go deeper in this research, certainly.
Yes, about this participation of European associations within the FP 5, 6, 7 programs, I was curious to know, are there leaders in this participation? Are there coordinators of the projects, or are there participants? And if there are participants, what is their role? Are there, because they represent end users, or they represent the way to impact European society or economy with this project? Because, you know, European association, for me, I could not draw a European association. I mean, I have lots of them in the head. They are all different. There is the European Association of people involved in cancer research. There is the European Orphanet, is maybe a French thing, but it must exist at the European level, about the rare disease network. I have lots of them in the head, and you have the European Association of Universities, which I'm ready to bet that is not participating in the FP7 project. It's a lobby instrument. So I don't know exactly what it is. Well, on one hand, on the other hand, I know lots of them, but they are so different from each other. And for me, I understand them. My feeling is that there are participants. I would be interested to know whether they coordinate and in which types of projects they coordinate. And their participation is, from my knowledge of the FP programs, is based on the fact that they are kind of warrant of the impact of the project. So I would like to know a little bit more about it.
And the fact for the importance of coordination, maybe it also explains a part of the private importance, because of the light of the laws for coordination and the economic legislation of Belgium, with very interesting for enterprise to basis finance and a part of legal activities in Belgium. And so maybe a part of the private project are in fact internal coordination of European-wide enterprises. I think by example, it's clearly for big enterprise like Solvay, but also like Nestlé. They have only big coordination unit in Belgium. We are redistributing the whole capital for the entire world, and I think that they are registered there.
First of all, I would like clarification, because I don't understand what is this reference to European actors, where you have put in a parenthesis EU plus association. So the EU in itself, it sets the rules of the game, but we do not participate in projects. Okay, so I don't know what do you have in mind. If you just have in mind the JRC by definition has to find 50% of its budget in competitive research projects. So, but the JRC is behaving like, it's not the EU, it's behaving like another research institute in the market, if you like. So that's a remark. Because I was not very comfortable with looking into the EU, into this participate, so we will not participate in this. Second remark is that this discussion is a bit, I think, flowed by the fact that on the one hand we are focusing on statistics and findings on research activities, where, broadly speaking, you are all more or less involved in innovation activities. I mean, I take your example. And I believe that the universities have a big role to play in the national and regional innovation system. But this is the importance, because you mentioned the triple helix at some point in your introduction. And if you are taking a triple helix approach, the first question you have to think about is what is the role that the university can play in this national or regional innovation system. Because the performance of a university, the framework program is probably interesting, but it's not really telling you anything in significant terms. Some people could be, in some cases, some people could be more successful than others in a research project. But the important thing is that, and for us at least, it's also if it could create any growth and jobs in the long run. Because otherwise, you know that increasingly we are accountable to the European Parliament and to other people. What are we doing with all this billion? And it's not a European issue. The Americans have exactly the same questions from the Congress. And they have now introduced a program which is called Star Metrics, which tries to identify what is the impact of all this in the economy. This is extremely difficult.
What's the name of it?
Star Metrics.
Star Metrics.
With, I think it's with an X or something like that. But it's introduced by the NSF. So the idea is that I think that if you try to situate the role of the university in this what you call Brussels Research Center, I would call it Research and Innovation System, because this would be more complete in this. And from that point on, it takes on a different meaning for the universities, for your innovation organizations. And it's only there that you can also have a political impact as a university. So there are cases where universities have been extremely active in taking on this role, and we have also, DigiRegio has produced a guide that you can find on the platform of the Seville Institute on the role of universities in regional growth.
Yeah.
Because there are specific examples where universities have taken a particular role, and where you can find, I would say, the added value of everything we are discussing here. Because in abstracto, there is no interest for a region to say, unless you are claiming, you know, an excellence championship. So you say, I'm better in biotech research or something else. If you are interested in this is fine. There are rankings for that, and we are now trying to introduce a European ranking for universities. But even all these university rankings, starting from the Shanghai one, they are focusing more on innovation and how the universities can really have an impact on the economic life than in everything else. So I think you have to take this kind of logic and not put it aside, because the framework program, again, is a very small part of the European research effort. We are no more than 10% of what European budgets are spent on research. And this is more difficult to measure, of course. But the real importance for me for a university in this endeavor is not so much on how many projects gets from the framework program. It's really what can be its real impact of course, in knowledge creation, but also in exploitation and in the innovation process.
Thanks very much, because that's the last topic that I would like to tackle during the last 5 minutes indeed. So the role of universities within Brussels knowledge creation. Do you need to focus on certain do you want to answer, Nicola?
Yeah, because I received a couple of questions, and if I can just...
Very quickly.
I will be very quickly. One question, is it possible to identify the role of European Association in project? No. According to the database I have, no. Having a database with something like 200,000 participation. I don't have the not even the role of if they are coordinators or others. Unfortunately, it's incomplete. I would have just very few things, and if we should focus on specific projects, I know that the DG research of the Commission did some analysis, so there are some reports more specific, but it's out of my possibility. The question why we could be interesting to exploit a European association, because this could bring new partnership. One of the problems when the Commission proposed to have the teaming and the twinning for new partnership, those channels could bring a way to understand what's going on in Slovakia, because if you're from Brussels, maybe it's harder to understand if there are new good partners in central Slovakia, southern Bulgaria, or whatever. And this can be difficult if you want to work on internationalization, like let's say to attract new international PhD students. How to find them? That's not immediate. Third things, what is just to the last question very specifically, yes, the GRC is under EU actors. I know they have to look for other projects and they're often involved in some FP calls. The idea is that the GRC is a very specific case. That cannot be compared with others. What I would really like would be to have an analysis also of the tenders by different DG. For example, we participated last week to DG Regio, in a tender as expert for DG Regio, that for the geography department is clearly my major reference, but could be interesting to have an idea of where are the experts from, let's say, all the DG. Then it's
but they have nothing to do with research.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's another thing.
Tenders now with FP activities. So, but in this case, for example, we just put in DD there, you can put clear with JRC because JRC is recognizable.
Okay.
It's much less confusing for people that are involved in the field, and I think it's
okay.
Excuse me, I really need to go. But I had a question. It's not in this study maybe, but if you could put a student on this, I would be interested. Does smart specialization...
Financed by Innoviris, of course.
Yes, of course, sure. But does smart specialization show better performance in FP7 participation? So. But in Brussels, we focus on environment, ICT, and health. Is this paying? I mean, is Brussels and...
Did we get our money back?
Yeah, in a sense. But of course...
2020.
Yes.
Yeah, but it is not... It is, well, we need probably to organize another meeting.
Yes.
But it is not the specialization of the region that in the first place, I mean, coming from the framework program that will determine what are the opportunities for tomorrow. All this is FP5, FP7.
Yes. Yeah. The first part of FP7.
So it could be in the future. Yeah, sure.
So, but of course, it has to have some correlation, but it's only one tiny issue.
Sure.
It's not people have to think before they their priorities for the future. I'm afraid I would have also to worry because
But I think we are.
Is there somebody with a last final remark or suggestion? No? Then thank you very much for your participation, and I will keep you posted with the next steps.
Next
June next year.
With the comparison with other cities. Need to organize the workshop and do the work, but all the results will be on the website.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.